Well, right now in Washington, busy day. Congress working to avoid a government shutdown and advance key legislation in the House. This after the House voted to expel now former Representative George Santos. And one Pennsylvania representative did not vote to oust him. Instead, U.S. House Representative Scott Perry, who represents the 10th Congressional District, Harrisburg and York areas, voted to keep Santos and joins us now today. Representative Perry, thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So let's get to George Santos. Why did you vote to keep him as a representative from New York?
Well, one of the foundations of our country is that we don't punish people that haven't been convicted of anything. And so that's called due process. And while I've heard a lot of stories about Mr. Santos, I don't know what's true or not. I'm focused on the 10th district and the things that my constituents, my bosses are struggling with. But there was no due process in this circumstance. And, since the inception of our nation, only 5 times has someone been expelled from Congress. 3 times, I think, in 1861 or thereabouts for those involved in the Confederacy, and then 2 times later than that, closer to current times. But both were convicted of crimes. Mr. Santos wasn't convicted of anything at this point, and I don't know if he ever will be. Maybe he will be. I don't want to speculate on that, but he wasn't convicted at this time and has not been convicted. And so I think it sends a very dangerous precedent. There's already discussions in the House now about expelling other members of which haven't been convicted. Meanwhile, we do have members that are serving in the House of Representatives that have been convicted, and there's no efforts to expel them. So I think that's a dangerous position to be in, where we're expelling and literally overturning the election, the election of members of Congress by their districts. We all have people that we disagree with, but if some district sends somebody to Congress, that's who they want. And if it's based on lies or something else, there's a way to rectify that the next election. It's only at the most 2 years away. So it's very concerning to me that we have taken this position, which is why I took the position that I did.
Well, House Ethics Committee did find that Santos did steal from his campaign, deceive donors. Do you consider those actions to be unbecoming of a member of Congress?
I absolutely do. And I will tell you, in the past, that's not, unfortunately, it's not a surprise around here. It's certainly not the first time. But as I've already said, based on the other history, people aren't expelled from that for Congress. There are other remedies, whether they're censured, whether they're fined, etc. The law needs to work its course. And if these are criminal activities, and likely they could be, let that run its course. If he were to be convicted, then expel someone. But it apparently wasn't appropriate in the past, but suddenly it's become appropriate. And I don't think it's the complete version of due process. While the Ethics Committee might have made its findings, it's not like a court of law where they make their presentations, the defense makes its presentations.
Okay.
These are members of Congress that get together and look over information to decide what's true or what's not. I don't think any of us really want to be in that position.
Well, let's talk another topic. Last week, the
Sure.
U.S. Court of Appeals, as you know, released those documents revealing alleged attempts by you to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. There were texts that were released. Were you working to overturn the election?
So I'm glad you asked the question, and let me reject the premise of your question and just think of it this way. If there's an investigator that's investigating a murder, they're not trying to bring the person back to life. They're trying to find out who did it, why they did it, what the motive was, what the circumstances were. And so, first of all, it was an unauthorized release. As you know, they immediately pulled it down and took it back off viewing because it was incorrect that they do that with fidelity to the court. And that having been said, it should be no crime for a representative on behalf of his constituents to ask these questions and to seek these answers. I was receiving thousands of calls, emails, texts, people coming up to me personally and asking me to find out this information. And so asking these questions is actually the job of a representative.
Okay, Representative Scott Perry, I am out of time with you. There's so much more I want to get into, but you're always welcome back to talk with here on News 8. I appreciate you being with us.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Right.
God bless you.
Thank you.